Oh, hang on a minute. That is Antonio Finch da Costa that's coming to some bother down at the first corner, and he's out. It's down to turn 3, and the red flag is out then.
Did you have any contact, or was it just on the brakes happening?
No, as soon as I touched the brake,
Okay.
it broke.
Now or never time for Oliver Rowland, and he misses out by 2/100ths of a second. The reigning world champion is out of qualifying in the group stages for the second day in a row. The two Andrettis also fail to make the cut. Freitz improves and pops it up into P6. Bird isn't doing anything to write home about and will come over the line in 9th position. Maloney's got personal best in Sector 2, but fails to improve from P10 on the grid. So it is then the two Mahindras and the two Jaguars that go through into the dual stages of qualifying. Gunter making an improvement in the final sector, stays P2. However, Nato looking like he might bring himself up the order. Vern does find a little bit of time, but only stays P6. Nato improves as well, but only goes P5, so he's not through. And that's the end then of qualifying. And the top 4 are fantastic 4 that will go through. Dan Ticktum, Maximilian Gunter, Pascal Wehrlein, and Stoffel van Doorn. We've got Mitch Evans going head-to-head with Nick de Vries, Nick Cassidy versus Edo Mortara, Pascal Wehrlein versus Maximilian Gunter, Stoffel van Doorn versus Dan Ticktum. Up first, though, for quarter-final 1, Mitch Evans versus Nick de Vries, Jaguar versus Mahindra. 2.5 tenths the gap between the two as Evans comes to complete his lap time, a 1:07.473. Just to give you an idea of where we were this morning in free practice 3, we were down into the 1:06s, courtesy of Mitch Evans, a 1:06.984. So we're a little bit away from that. There's a good banker lap time there in the first quarter final for Mitch Evans, and it's quicker than Nick de Vries. We come to the line, de Vries makes up time in the final sector, but it's not enough to out-qualify Mitch Evans. Quarter-final 2, Nick Cassidy versus Eduardo Mortara. Down the start-finish straight we go, meanwhile, for Edo Mortara. Let's see what Mortara can do. Big lock up, and it's all over before it's even begun. Mortara makes a mistake. Lap time is going to be over and done with then.
Warning, PPW. I lost the brakes.
And Cassidy, all he's got to do now is complete the lap without too much bother, and he'll be in the pound seats and through into the semi-finals. Quarter-final 3, Pascal Wehrlein versus Maximilian Gunter. Wehrlein coming through the final sector as well as Maximilian Gunter, and it's advantage Gunter in the DS Penske. Is he going to out-qualify the outgoing world champion? He certainly is by 1/10.5 of a second. Max Gunter to most the Tag Heuer Porsche out of qualifying in the quarter-finals. This is going to be an interesting one. Stoffel van Doorn versus Dan Ticktum. Maserati versus Cupra Kiro. Van Doorn just losing a bit more time in Sector 2 and then further in Sector 3 as well. I think he's just going to compound that. Ticktum's up by nearly a second or so as we come in towards Sector 3. This is a fantastic time from Dan Ticktum then. And Van Doorn is going to be absolutely nowhere in response. A 1:07 flat, that's near as, makes no difference. One of the fastest lap times that we've seen this weekend. So not long to go until we get the semi-finals underway. Mitch Evans versus Nick Cassidy first of all, and then Maximilian Gunter versus Dan Ticktum. It's a Jaguar showdown. Mitch Evans versus Nick Cassidy going head-to-head against one another. Is Evans going to be able to build back or close down some of that deficit in the second sector? Cassidy's very deep down into turn 16. That's the lap time gone away. And surely, unless Mitch Evans makes a mistake in the final sector, it will be the left-hand side of the garage that goes through into the semi-finals. Cassidy's lap is done. And unfortunately, Mitch Evans, for Cassidy rather, and delight there for Mitch Evans, as unfortunately that mistake there for Cassidy demotes him out of it. Or does it? No. Evans has slowed down. So Evans slowed down. What? Team tactics then, quite clearly, for Jaguar TCS Racing, and they're thinking about their team championship, they're thinking about Cassidy and the Drivers' Championship. Max Gunter versus Dan Ticktum, DS Penske versus Cupra Kiro then. Ticktum with 1/10.5 or so in his pocket, just needs to keep this consistent, calm and controlled into the final couple of corners, and it will be Dan Ticktum that will go through as we come out of turn 20, aiming for the timing line. He's picked up another couple of tenths of a second, and Ticktum will go into the finals and will be head-to-head with Nick Cassidy for pole position in the Britain's home round here in London. Cassidy got the better of Evans with some teams gamesmanship going on in the semi-finals, and Tictum trounced Gunther as well. Ready to go for the finals for the final time in 2025. Nick Cassidy versus Dan Tictum. Jaguar versus Cupra Kiro. Looks like got it hooked up okay through turns 1, 2 and 3.
Yeah, a little bit of oversteer on turn in there. Might have compromised him marginally, because that's a sort of corner, that double right, where you just need to keep it rolling.
So he slowed the laps down here. So Cassidy on the left-hand side of your screen, Tictum on the right. We already know a slight mistake for Cassidy in the middle part of the first sector. Come through turn 3. What does it look like here for Dan Tictum? Because this is where we saw the kick of oversteer for Cassidy. Just struggles to get the car rotated in there. That sent him offline a little bit going down into turn 5. Tictum, meanwhile, looks all okay so far.
Yeah, he's up, but only 600, so not by much at all. As they open up the wheel now, the wider part of the track, coming out of 9, down to the bus stop chicane. And I think Cassidy was a little bit deep. We'll see if that's affected the lap time, but I don't think he got that first apex as well. But the effect maybe was that he carried more speed, and you can see that's reflected in the lap time.
Yeah, down into the second sector for Dan Tictum, and he's built up that advantage to 1/10 of a second. So it's looking pretty good into the final few corners here.
Yeah, that neck time, I don't think it's good enough, as Dan is able to replicate what he's done previously.
Yeah, Cassidy's absolutely on the back foot here, with Tictum flying his way through the final corner. Who is going to get pole position awarded here in London? We come to the line, and Dan Tictum has done it for the first time in his Formula E career. Dan Tictum will take 3 points and the Julius Baer pole position award, but unfortunately he's got a 5-place grid penalty and will start at best P6 on the road. So Cassidy will be at the head of the grid for round 16 this afternoon.